Hey guys, welcome to Jonathan E-Learning channel. This is International Business Courses, Chapter 7, The Political Economy of International Trade. In the previous chapter, we have learned about free trade and international trade theories. Free trade always has an idea whereby there is a situation in which government does not attempt to restrict what its citizens can buy from and sell to another country. Generally, it sounds good and ideal to most of the country, but somehow, in a way, would it be real? It's happened to all the nation. In this chapter, we will look at the political reality of international trade. Although many nations are nominally committed to free trade, they tend to intervene in international trade to protect the interests of politically important groups or promote the interests of key domestic producers. Besides, we also are going to explore the political and economic reasons that governments have for intervention in international trade. When governments intervene, they often do so by restricting imports of goods and services into their nations, while adopting policies that promote domestic production and export. And we also will look further on the range of policy instruments that the government use to intervene in international trade in this chapter. Instruments of trade policies. Trade policy use seven main instruments: tariff, subsidies, import quotas, voluntary export restraint, local content requirements, anti-dumping policies, and finally, administrative policies. Tariff. Tariff is a tax levy on imports or export. Tariff falls into two categories: specific tariff and ad valorem tariff. Specific tariffs are levied as a fixed charge for each unit of a goods imports. Ad valorem tariffs are levied as a proportion of the value of the imported goods. In most cases, tariffs are placed on imports to protect domestic producers from foreign competition by raising the price of imported goods. However, tariffs also produce revenue for the government. The important things to understand about an imported tariff is who suffer and who's gain. In most cases, the government gains because the tariff increase government revenue. Domestic producer also gains, whereby the tariff afford them some protection against foreign competitors by increasing the cost of imported foreign goods. Consumer may lose as they must pay more for certain imports. Whether the gains to the government and domestic producer exceed the loss to consumer depends on various factors such as the amounts of the tariff, the importance of the imported goods to domestic consumer, the numbers of jobs saved in the protected industry, and so on would be counted. In general, two conclusions can be derived from the economic analysis of the effect of important tariff. First, tariffs are pro-producer and anti-consumer. While they protect producers from foreign competitors, this restrict of supply also raise domestic price. Secondly, imported tariffs reduce the overall efficiency of the world economy. They reduce efficiency because a protective tariff encourage domestic firms to produce products at home that in theory could be produced more efficiently abroad. The consequences is an inefficient utilization of resources. Sometimes tariffs are levied on export of products from a country. export tariffs are far less common than import tariffs. In general, export tariffs have two objectives. First, to raise revenue for the government, and second, to reduce export from a sector, often for political reasons. After study about tariff, now let us move on to subsidy. Subsidy is a government payment to a domestic producer. Subsidies take many forms, including cash grants, low-interest loan, tax break, and government equity participations in domestic firms. By lowering production costs, subsidy helps domestic producers in two ways. First, compete against low-cost foreign imports. Second, try to gain export markets. While the purpose of the subsidy was to help them survive a very difficult economic climate, one of the consequences was give subsidy companies an unfair competitive advantage in the global competitions. The main gains from subsidy accrued to domestic producers, whose international competitiveness is increased as a result. Advocates of strategic trade policy favor subsidies to help domestic firms achieve a dominant position in those industries in which economies of scale are important and the world market is not large enough to profit support more than a few firms. According to these arguments, subsidies can help a firm achieve a first mover advantage in an emerging industries. If this is achieved, further gains to the domestic economy arise from the employment and tax revenue that a major global company can generate. However, government subsidies must be paid for, typically by taxing individuals and corporations. Whether subsidies generate national benefit that exceed their national costs is debatable. In practice, many subsidies are not that successful at increasing the international competitiveness of domestic producers. Rather, they tend to protect the inefficient and promote excess production. Coming up next, import quotas. Import quota is a direct restriction on the quantity of some goods that may be imported into a country. The restriction is usually enforced by issuing import licenses to a group of individuals or firms. A common hybrid of quotas and a tariff is known as a tariff rate quotas. Tariff rate quotas apply with a lower tariff rate to imports within the quota than those over the quotas. For an example, Japan used the combination of a tariff rate quotas and subsidy to protect inefficient Japanese wheat farmers from foreign competitions.